Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's AMA. We are talking about essentially the concept of meal sequencing, whether there is a proper order for how to, in what order we should have our meals, what kinds of foods we should have in what order. So we have our guest expert Pranoti with us today to explain this to us. Hi Pranoti, welcome to the
Hi.
AIM.
Thank you. Thanks, Anushka.
Thank you for joining us today and taking time to discuss this. So,
Sure. My pleasure.
yeah, so I thought we can start with explaining the concept of meal sequencing itself. Can you tell us a little bit about what is it exactly and how does it impact blood sugar specifically?
Sure. It's a pretty simple concept, really speaking, and it means what it actually says. It basically means that in a meal, most of us tend to eat a cereal, which is a carb. Then we usually have something like a dal or sprouts or maybe some non-veg egg, chicken, fish. It's basically protein. After which we always have a sabzi or a salad, or sometimes even both, and this includes even a raita, a curd-based raita. Right, and most of our food usually has some fat in it while we are cooking, right? So fat as a component is not eaten separately, unlike other Western cuisines where they have something that they have specifically. But so basically, our meals contain a cereal, a protein, and a fiber, and of course, a fat as part of it. It's about how do you sequence these individual food items in a meal so that your blood sugars remain in control. And I think this concept is so practical and so simple that everyone who is living with diabetes should know about it, because just this small hack can actually change your post meal blood sugar readings in a big way, right? So that's basically meal sequences, as simple as that, as to how do you order the meal so that your blood sugars come in control. uh, what you do is you start off your meal with a salad or a protein rich dish, preferably a salad, right? Then you follow it up with whatever was the protein food that you had planned for that meal. So for vegetarians or for everyone, it could be a dal, it could be sprouts. Someone who enjoys non-veg, it could be fish, it could be chicken, it could be eggs. Then you move to the vegetable component, cooked vegetable component like we have in our meals, and keep the carbs the last. So the whole meal sequencing or meal ordering or food order concept is about keeping carbs or cereals the last. First, have all the fiber, have the protein with the fat in it, have your cooked vegetable, and then go last to your cereal, which is basically your carb. When I say cereal, I mean your roti or your chawal, bhakri, whatever that may be, right? Have that the last. Just changing this order, because all of us anyways eat this, right, in a meal. But just changing this order can impact blood sugar in a big way. The data says that when you change this order in the meal, or rather keeping carbs or eating carbs the last, which is your cereal, which again, I mean, I don't want to leave it at just carbs because a lot of people wouldn't understand what carbs means. It means your roti or your chawal or your bhakri last. Research has shown that blood sugar levels can drop anywhere between 25 to 30% after 30 minutes, anywhere between 35 to 40% after 60 minutes, which I think is great, and almost 15 to 17% after 2 hours. So, if you had eaten your cereal first, your sugars would have been 25 to 30% higher than if you move the cereal to the last, right? So that's what this concept is about. I know I gave a little too detailed explanation, but it's as simple as that, and that's why I love it, because it's so practical for anyone with diabetes to implement it.
Okay. So, would you say that there are similar rules that we can also apply to, snacking, like if we are having smaller meals in between our big meals?
Cool. So I'm not a big snacking fan, especially for someone dealing with diabetes, because it every time you snack, you spike your insulin, and you're already dealing with limited insulin. especially those with long-term diabetes, their internal insulin stores are anyway depleting. So I usually prefer to ensure insulin is used wisely. So I'm not a snacking fan, and I don't recommend snacking for anyone with diabetes. But yes, I do know, especially between a lunch and a dinner where the gap is much longer, people do feel hungry, which is understandable. So instead of grabbing onto unhealthy snacks, a good thing to do maybe sometimes is to if you're having a fruit, a smart way to have a fruit is, of course, first choose a fruit that will not spike your blood sugar in a big way. So preferably don't choose a sweet fruit, choose a more high fiber fruit. But you can even lower the spike that the high fiber fruit can cause by including some nuts or seeds prior to eating the fruit. So if you're planning to eat a fruit, first have a fistful of mixed nuts. It could be anything. It could be plain groundnuts if you have those, or it could be a mix of a few walnuts, almonds, and pistachio. And a fistful of those. Please might be mindful because they are high calorie foods. And then go ahead and have the fruit, and and one fruit, or a bowl, a small bowl of fruit if it's a cut fruit. And you will realize that your blood sugars don't spike as much, because you have preceded a carb with a protein and fat mix food. And the way that this whole thing works is that when you have something rich in fiber or fat, it slows down the entire digestion process, because of which the sugars take time to get digested and enter the bloodstream, and hence there is no big spike and drop. That's how the whole concept works.
Okay. Right. Thanks for explaining that so simply. And how many hours of gap would you say that there should be between the major meals, breakfast, lunch, dinner?
So it depends now. If you are someone who's on drugs, okay, what I mean are tablets for managing your diabetes, then and depending on the tablet that you are, so there are some tablets that work by making your pancreas release more insulin, right? They're called sulfonylureas. Those, when you have those kind of tablets, then you have to immediately follow it up with something, right? So usually doctors, when they recommend such tablets, will always tell you have them before a meal, right? So if you're someone who is eating tablets, and you are having your if your tablets are, let's say, before breakfast, then a breakfast, lunch, maybe a small fruit or nuts or something in between with your evening tea, and dinner suffice. You don't have to really keep eating every 2-3 hours, which was originally the way. The original research, early research, is that's what it said. But the more recent research says that you don't have to keep eating every 3-4 hours, because every time you eat, like I mentioned before, your insulin gets released, and you're trying to manage with a limited amount of insulin. So it's makes most sense to use it wisely.
Right, that makes sense. And these days there are also people who have trouble sticking to a specific schedule for their meals. Like maybe they might be busy, they might forget to eat a meal or two, or they may be following something like a diet or a fast, like intermittent fasting or something. So, is there any impact of skipping meals, or like, what is the amount of time between two meals before it becomes a problem?
Fair. So again, when you decide to skip meals and you want to do it in as part of your diet plan, it's best that you consult a nutritionist or a dietitian, so that you get personalized advice basis your medical history, what your other health challenges are, what medications you're on. But if to answer your question for the larger population, I think I would say that if you are on medicines, like I just said, you can have your breakfast, you can have a lunch, a snack in between, and dinner. Uh, Unless you feel low blood sugar symptoms and you truly have low blood sugar, which you should check with a glucometer. A lot of times our body just reacts because we're used to eating every 3-4 hours. So when you don't give your body that meal in that third or the fourth hour, your body, out of habit reacts and says, you know what, I'm hungry, I'm feeling low sugar. So unless you actually have low blood sugar episode, there is really no need to eat anything. But if you are on insulin, then yes, depending on the type of insulin that you are, it might warrant that you eat a breakfast, a mid meal, that is a mid morning, something between breakfast and lunch, then a mid evening, and your dinner. So it all depends on your medication. What are the health challenges that you are having? So there can't be a blanket solution for this. But most often, people who are on tablets do not need to eat every 3-4 hours. If they feel hungry and more, not more than hungry, if they feel a low blood sugar episode coming on, a smart way to deal with it is to check their blood sugar. If it's below 70, then yes, of course, or it's approaching 70, then yes, of course, you must eat something. But if you are in the safe range above 100, then you're doing well. You can grab something that's small and that's healthy. But if you are on insulin, and depending on the type of insulin you are taking, it helps to have more meals. I hope that answers.
Okay, so you said that if there is a low blood sugar episode happening, then something small and healthy. If your sugar is in the safe zone. So, what would be an example of that? Like, are we
So
talking
if
about?
you're Sorry.
Yeah.
So yeah, if your blood sugar is in the low blood sugar zone, which is usually 70 and lower, then the entire way of managing a hypoglycemic is what the terminology for it is very different. It's called the 15-15-15 approach, where you are supposed to have 15 grams of carbohydrates or sugar, which is as simple as taking 3 teaspoons of sugar if you're at home, dissolving it in a cup of water and drinking it up, right? If you're outside, then about having half a cup of fruit juice, or if you are again outside, you can actually get glucose tablets that you can carry. So that's what we usually recommend people who have repeated episodes of low blood sugar to carry these glucose tablets. They're easily available at any medical store, and every tablet tells you how much gram of sugar it contains. Usually it contains 5 grams. So you can dissolve 2 or 3 of those tablets in the water and drink it up. So the way that follows is, you have that 15 grams of sugar or that drink. You wait for 15 minutes. You check your blood sugar again. If it's come into the normal range, then you're good. Have a small healthy snack after that. If it's still low, then you have to repeat this cycle and again check after 15 minutes, right? So hypoglycemia is managed differently, like I said. But if your blood sugars are in the safe zone, that is 100 and above, then if you're still hungry, uh, you know, maybe what you could do is, grab a fistful of nuts and follow it up with a fruit. You could have boiled egg, you could have sprout chaat, you could have a moong dal or besan, a small moong dal or besan chila. You could have a fistful of groundnuts, chana groundnuts mix as well. There's a lot that you can have, but it's preferably to keep the quantity low, because you're actually feeding your mind than you're actually feeding your body, right?
That makes sense. So, and when people are generally when they're fasting, or they are skipping meals and all that. So, what would you say, like when they do eat, what is the kind of focus they should give for their meals? What should they eat?
Right. So if you're someone living with diabetes and attempting an intermittent fasting schedule, I would strongly urge you to consult someone. When I say someone, is a dietitian who would kind of give you holistic advice, considering all your other health issues, your medical history, your blood sugar parameters, and the medicines you're on. But answering your question, if you have fasted for a while and you decide to, you want to break your fast, because you're fasted for long, obviously you're hungry, and when we're hungry, we typically tend to gravitate towards something sweet. And when you gravitate towards when you eat something sweet after long hours of fasting, the chances of your sugar spiking much higher than they normally would have is much more, because there's nothing in the stomach, right? So when that sugar lands, it just hits the system, and the insulin's released and the blood sugar spikes, right? Or rather, the blood sugar spikes and then the insulin is released. So it's always better to start with something that has a little bit of fat or protein in it. Even something as tossed paneer or tossed tofu, or maybe sorted sprouts. Just begin with that, and then follow it up with a fruit, and anything else that you would like to. So just kind of being smart. You eat exactly. You get to eat everything. It's just being smart about what you eat first and what you eat next, so that you can in some way trick your body to not spike that blood sugar and not spike that insulin following the blood sugar.
Right. So basically, on an empty stomach, if you have something that is high carb or high sugar, that's when you're more likely to have a spike, because
Yeah.
there's nothing else that's being digested at that time, right? That's what is actually happening.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
basically, the idea would be to have something with protein or fiber like that, right? So that that is getting digested first, and then the sugar or carbs that will come later, so that the blood sugar is
Absolutely.
coming up much slower, right? And it's
Yes.
spread over a period of time.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Makes sense. Yeah, thanks so much for taking the time out to explain this to us. And I mean, if you have 2 minutes, maybe you can recap what we talked about in the beginning, which is that for a diabetic person, what would be the ideal meal order, just for anyone who's logged in a little later during the live.
Sure. Sure, sure. So keep your carbs or your cereals the last at in any meal. Start your meal either with a protein-rich food, or so when I say protein-rich food, it could be just chicken, it could be fish, it could be eggs from that egg curry, or you can start with a salad. So protein, either you start with a salad or a protein, it doesn't matter, but ensure your cereal comes last. When I say cereal, again I'll repeat, it's your roti, your chawal, right? If you're someone who eats breads, then any kind of bread in terms of your brown bread, multigrain bread, then it's last. So start with the fiber, then go to your protein, and then last eat your carbs, right? Just like I said, just moving the sequence ensures that the fiber in the salad and the protein in the non-vegetarian or even vegetarian food slows down the entire time that the body takes to digest this food. So when the cereal goes in, it ensures that the sugars don't spike at all, because the entire digestion process has already been slowed down by these two foods. So the same exact meal, your same thali, just change the order, because that can reduce your post-meal blood sugar spike in a pretty significant way.
Thanks so much, Pranoti, for explaining this to us so simply. And thank you, everyone who tuned in today, as well as anyone who's watching this later. We hope that this was helpful. We hope that you learned something that you can apply in your life, make it a little easier or a little better. And we will see you all next week, the same time for the next AMA. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.